Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. However you're watching, wherever you're watching, however you listen, wherever you listen. It's the Bet Online Salute to Troy podcast. And we're missing one leg of the Bearded Bandits, but it's always good because we got the Madman in the house. Jamal, Madman, Maggie, how are you doing today?
Doing well, Coach. Doing well on this lovely Monday. We got the USC Women of Troy on the cusp of a Final Four berth here with Juju Watkins battling Paige Beckers in UConn for an opportunity to go to the first Final Four in 30 years. So very exciting day indeed for USC sports. And obviously we'll get into it on some of the recruiting front, but always a pleasure to see you, Coach. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I just want to correct you on something that you texted me about the other day. You said that Cheryl Miller never won a national championship.
No, I said she's won two. I said, you asked me if Juju Watkins can get to Cheryl Miller. I said, Juju's going to have to win some hardware because Cheryl Miller was back-to-back national champion, 83 and 84.
I don't think she's ever won one. They showed something on the other day that said, I don't know. I don't think she's ever won one. I could be wrong.
Cheryl is 83 and 84, bro. That's royalty right there. USC royalty. The two women of Troy natties, courtesy of the great Cheryl Miller.
I'm not taking anything away from her, but maybe they got it wrong on ESPN.
I'm always reminded of you remember that 30 for 30 with Cheryl Miller and Reggie Miller? Yeah. It was like the Miller household. And Reggie walks in, like it was a story when they were in high school. And their dad picked up Reggie from his game after he picked up Cheryl from her game. And he's like, listen, I was feeling so good getting in the car. I dropped 42 in that game. It was like a career high. I felt really good. And he was like, I came in, took it to him and all this stuff. And then he was like, by the way, how was your game? And Cheryl was like, I had a pretty good game. And he's like, what, like 50? He's like, nah, I mean, I did the shots were fun. What, 60? And then Cheryl's answer was 106.
Yes, she dropped like 106. I do stand corrected. She 83 and 84, like you said. So ESPN was all the way wrong this weekend when they put that up.
There you go. This is why you get all your credible news at the Los Angeles Football Network. And, if you want to play amateur hour, you go to ESPN. So
it just happened to pop up. But, yeah, hopefully our girl Juju could pull it off. And they go to the Final Four. Yeah. It'd be great to see her win 4 in a row. That
would be something. But let me tell you something, Coach. I don't know if you got a chance to see that that LSU Iowa game from earlier today. Man, oh man, that was something. Caitlin Clark, 41 points, 12 assists, 7 rebounds en route to avenging that national championship game last year. She is something else. Juju's definitely the second best player in the country in my mind, but Caitlin Clark is definitely the best player in the country. For her to take that Iowa team back to the Final Four, that's really something. Because if you look at that roster, outside of Caitlin Clark, there really isn't a star on that team at all. It is all Caitlin Clark.
Yeah, so one thing I would say is sometimes you just talk too much. I'll just leave it at that. Like, we know how good you are, but sometimes you just talk too much and you forget.
What are you saying, Fred? What are you saying, Fred?
What are you saying, Fred? You forget that you forget that you have to play, and people listen and you talk, and you don't know how they're taking that. And when those people show up and they drop 41 on you and taking shots from behind the half court line and draining them on you just to show off, sometimes you just talk too much. And that is something that comes from the top, Moffitt, but we'll just leave it at that. Sometimes you just talk too much. Anyway, the weekends continue. Let's get down to business. We had another big recruiting weekend, and it just keeps rolling and rolling. The defense got better. We're going to start with the 4-star linebacker, 6'4", 210. That dude is a beast. 6'4", 210, and he's only going to be a junior from San Clemente High School. Excuse my pronunciation. That's what I was thinking. Matai Tagoa'i. Tagoa'i?
I've got it as Matai Tagoa'i. Yeah, but I think, we're trying our best in terms of the pronunciation, but I think that's close. Yeah. So
Matai Tagoa'i. So This was something I was going to bring up last week, and Ryan kind of touched on it a little bit. And we were kind of worried that Lincoln doesn't really recruit in the backyard. And that's kind of an issue for me. That hits home a little bit because, this is a hotbed for football, baseball and football, and even basketball a little bit. And for them not to be getting recruits from the backyard. Originally, I just thought it was Alex Grinch, and he just wanted his guys. And I worked with a dude who only recruited dudes from Texas. No matter what. He's not from Texas. He's not good enough. Same height, same speed, everything. Even the kid from California might have better grades. No, we want the guy from Texas. All in love with Texas. Just an example. It's just an example. And it was worrying me a little bit. So, my question to you about this commit, is this reopening the door for SoCal kids who want to come back to SC?
Coach, it's a great question. I think it's starting to reinforce the narrative that it's going to be a very balanced approach to recruiting, that there's going to be looking at things nationally, but also looking at things locally. The things that are very encouraging with Matai Tagoa'i is, as you mentioned, 4-star, 6'4". The weight is sort of fluctuating depending on what outlet you talk to. Folks have him as low as 185. Folks have him as high as 210. Bottom line is he's going to grow into his body in a significant way. And he's from San Clemente High School, which my in-laws live in San Clemente. So I have a natural affinity for San Clemente. But let's not forget, the most famous of San Clemente graduates who had a decorated USC career was none other than Sam Darnold. And so the opportunity to kind of go back to a prior school where the program has had success, but also sort of reestablish that Orange County pipeline. We all know that Orange County area is really the heart of kind of Trojan Nation and the Trojan family. So many Trojans down in Orange County, between San Clemente, between Newport, Irvine, all of that area. And so when you talk about Mater Dei and you talk about, Los Alamitos and Santa Margarita and all of those big-time private schools down in Orange County, you think USC first. And so I think this is a nice point to sort of bring up, that it sort of solidifies that they are looking at that area and not just exclusively focused nationally. And Fred, this is now the fourth top 100 recruit that USC has been able to get in the class of 2025. We'll talk about the other one here shortly, but definitely a very nice sign, the mix between local and national. And I think it just speaks to how much these kids want to play for Eric Henderson and by extension, DeAnton Lynn.
Yeah, and I understand that national recruiting is a thing now, right? If you want to recruit, you have to recruit nationally. You can't stay home. I get that, but I just me personally, I don't care if it works for Lincoln Riley. It works for Lincoln Riley, and if they win ball games, they win ball games. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. But me personally, I would like to see people from Southern California, because that's what I grew up with, right? That's what we grew up with. You see Southern California high school legends go to USC, become USC legends, and so it would be nice to see Southern California kids. The thing about it is, and it could be a gift and a curse. It kind of happened to Charlie Strong. Charlie Strong really did hit Texas hard. You know what I mean? He just wanted to recruit whoever he wanted to recruit. If Charlie Strong was winning, I don't think it really matters, right?
Right.
But Charlie Strong didn't win, and that was the issue. He didn't recruit Texas. So Lincoln just needs to be careful of what could come back to get him. That could easily turn into he didn't recruit SoCal. That's why he wasn't good. You know what I mean? You went all the other places and you didn't recruit SoCal. So that's the only thing I'm worried about. But right now, he's getting guys with size, speed, and can play football. You remember we had this talk that his first year and last year too, they were getting a lot of 3-star guys, 2-star guys. And we were okay. But now, the bars
4 and 5.
4 and 5 stars, and that matters. So that's something to look forward to. And this kid coming in works out perfect because the linebacker class is clearing out after 2024, right?
Sure.
So after this season, these dudes a lot of them are graduating, and they're going to be young. So you might see some portal guys come in like spring 2025, because of youth. But
absolutely.
But it's good for the growth, and we get to see Trojans develop. You agree?
Absolutely. And I totally agree, Fred. I mean, you saw obviously Tack Curtis transferred. You've got a situation here where our man Shane Lee, termed out, and now you've got some veterans here with Mason Cobb. You've got some veterans here with Jamil Muhammad. You've got some veterans across the board that have one more year before they head off. You wonder what's going to happen with Gentry after this year. In terms of what his options are going to be. So you want to get that cupboard ripe with depth yet again, and I think this is a tremendous get. The other thing that I'm very encouraged by, Fred, in terms of the conversation about local is with Tagoa'i, on the predictions, USC was over 90%, whether you talk about on 3 or 247, the crystal ball was 90-95% USC. Single-digit percentage for the likes of a Utah, for the likes of a Washington, for the likes of a Texas. So this wasn't one of those where it was like 52-48 and he picks USC against a very strong contender. It really felt like USC was the only true favorite to land him. So not only did they land him, but it also seems like the favoritism for USC in this Orange County area with this particular prospect was very, very strong. And hopefully that now becomes a precedence for some of these other guys that are going to fall in line after him moving forward.
I like to expand it anymore. I think it goes into LA County too. I still think SoCal kids want to go to USC.
No question. No question.
They just, for a while, I don't think we're given the opportunity to go.
Yep.
I guess you could say that. So I think they still want to go to USC. And like with this whole recruiting thing, it takes one kid. You get the right SoCal kid to commit to USC, and then all of a sudden they're all going to start.
And the floodgates open.
Yeah, It starts opening up. So, and there's no limits on scholarships anymore, right? So you don't have to sign to fill your 85. As long as you sign what you sign, you don't go over your 85, you're good now. So that's a good thing too. So it's good to see. I'm gonna butcher his name again. Come on, Jamal, help me out.
Matai Tagoa'i.
Yeah, coming up to the University of Southern California. Welcome home. We got a SoCal kid. This is a notch. This one makes me feel happy. Out of all the commits, this one it shows that there's a little bit of hope, and we see some SoCal kids. So I'm good to see that. Moving forward on the defensive side, I'm gonna start with this. I should have started the show off with this. When we were hard on Lincoln Riley, you were one of the ones just saying it's time for him to show if he's going to do it or not. We're also on him like, why did it take this for him to do this and all that? But he's really improving the defense. I don't know if it's a D'Anton Lynn, like, hey, if you want me to come here, you need to fix this. Or if it's I want to keep this job. And it may be 50-50. It may be 60-40 or 59, 49-51. But he is really, really working on that defense. With that being said, he just signed 4-star safety out of Duval County, Hilton Stubbs, another safety. I'm a little worried now. And I'm going to tell you why. And the reason why I'm worried is because now the defensive backfield is really, really loaded. And when I say loaded, I mean depth-wise. Like, they're 3-4 deep in the defensive backfield. You got Ramsey, you got Humphrey. Is Humphrey a corner or is he a safety?
He's a combo guy, but he's more corner. Yep.
Okay. You got Ramsey, you got Humphrey, you got Beavers, you got man, I just wrote it down the other day. You got
Branch.
You got Branch. You got the 2 kids that committed the other day.
Yep. You got and then you got Matt. You got Akili Arnold.
But Akili Arnold will be gone.
Yep. But so Fred, to that point, so will Ramsey potentially.
You think so?
I mean, if he has a good year, he could potentially be gone. Humphreys will definitely be gone.
I'm just looking at it on. I'm just looking at it on paper, like where they are in class.
Right. Yeah. You know assuming I mean? Guys who haven't termed out have the opportunity to come back. Absolutely. I mean, it's going to be loaded. There's no question about it.
So the question is, how do you keep them there? You know what I mean? It's harder. It's harder to recruit a safety now at USC than it is to recruit any other position, right? I can even go recruit a quarterback, even though Julian Lewis is all in. I can go beat him out. I don't care. You know what I mean? Like, I'm better than him. Like, but a safety is like, you got 3 commits, and then you got 2 dudes that are really good, and then you got Branch that's coming back off injury. You got Beavers who just showed up and is really good. Like, we got an issue here. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like your room is loaded. So with NIL, with transfer portal, my question to you, Jamal, is, and it might be an outlandish question, but I'm kind of interested here. Do you think they're wasting time now recruiting safeties and getting these commitments for safeties?
I think, Fred, the nature of the game now moving forward, if you're truly an elite program, I think you go in with an expected attrition rate. I think if you are what Alabama has been the last 10 years, or what Georgia has been, or what Ohio State has been, and what Clemson was for a certain time before they adopted NIL, or LSU, and on the list you go, I think you recruit relentlessly, but then you also recognize that, look, 30% of these guys probably are not going to finish their career with us. But that's kind of the game that you're willing to play. You're sort of like, look, we're going to recruit relentlessly. We're going to get total depth. Things will happen. Transfers will happen. Injuries will happen. Unhappiness will happen. But we would rather go recruit 10 guys for different position groups, knowing maybe 6 or 7 are going to finish out and 3 or 4 are going to leave, than go less and assume everyone's going to finish out. Because the nature of this game, between injury, between money, if some other program is offering you big bucks, you're the 5th guy on a position group, and some other program comes in and gives you big NIL money. It doesn't really matter that it's USC. It doesn't really matter that you get to play in the Coliseum. The history doesn't really matter. You want to go get the bag. And so I think you need to sort of create a margin for error for yourself. So I agree with you. I think the secondary is absolutely loaded moving forward. Stubbs is going to have to sort of get into that fight. Now, granted, it is 2025. It's not this year. It's the year after this year. But I think if you're truly an elite program, you want to go in with, recruiting, knowing 30 to 40% of the guys that you're recruiting aren't going to finish with you.
And you know what model that is? That's Division II model of recruiting. So I'll give you an example, and we'll get to Stubbs here, but I'll give you an example. We will recruit and oversign kids, right? So say we're only allowed to sign 25. We'll sign 40, right? Because the attrition rate of Division II is crazy. Like those dudes roll through there like the freeway, like it's just constantly moving. So even though like in the spring our roster is full, when fall camp comes around, the roster is no longer full and everybody has a scholarship. I wouldn't be surprised if we start to see D2 coaches coming through the ranks have very much success at the Division I level.
That's a great point. Yep.
You know what I mean? Because like they're used to it. Like this is exactly how Division II coaching is. And probably 1AA also. Like you have to over project and hope it doesn't fail on you. But you have to, if you don't over project, you end up short and no depth, and your team ends up not very good. It's kind of like forecasting. When you over forecast for your monthlies, like, you over forecast a little bit, and if you do hit it, you're like, oh, that's not good.
Right, exactly.
But if you don't hit it, you're like, oh, I over forecast a little bit, we're good, we're fine. So it's kind of like that.
It's the other point too, Fred, that you're bringing up. It's being ready for the attrition, like we talked about, but then it's also depth. And one of the things that the difference between an elite program and a good program is depth. And I'll give you an example on our network. And it's the off season, so I'm gonna cross over here for a second. Obviously, we've got the UCLA show, the Bruin Bible. We talk a lot about UCLA football. We have Wayne Cook on the show very often. He's Rose Bowl quarterback for UCLA in the 90s. And he would always talk about that, hey, listen, in the 90s, even in the 2000s, UCLA 1, 2, 3 was really good at the positions. But the difference for UCLA to be able to get that 10 wins versus kind of being 6 or 7 was they had to get really lucky every year with injuries because the depth wasn't there. And when he was like that, for UCLA to kind of hit it in a year, you got to be clean injury-wise. Whereas USC football, you can have injuries and still survive because of the depth. The difference between USC football and UCLA football, if you look at the gap in terms of talent across the positions, like your top guy, your top 2 guys, your top 3 guys, that's kind of a comparable talent set, outside of the Reggie Bushes or, a Taylor Mays or just some unicorn. But by and large, 1, 2, 3 is pretty comparable. Where the gap exists is 4, 5, 6. Because 4, 5, 6 at USC is actually very close to 1, 2, 3. But 4, 5, 6 at UCLA, huge gap between who the 1, 2, 3 guys are. So in order to truly be an elite program, you have to have that depth and you have to be able to deal with the attrition.
That's interesting. I want to talk to you about that. Not on the show, but I thought in the 90s, it was like, if you're good, real quick, and then we won't go down this road. But I thought in the 90s when it was the big USC UCLA, winner wins the Pac-10. If you were good in Southern California, it was take your pick, USC or UCLA. Like I thought all the SoCal talent was going to USC and UCLA. I thought they were equally matched at that time. Am I wrong?
No, I think you're absolutely right. But I think some of the bigger hitters back then went to UCLA, and so it sort of created this competitive balance in the 80s and 90s. But even in the 90s, Wayne would talk about, hey, one year we went to the Rose Bowl, and the very next year we'd have 7 wins. And then the next year we'd be back in Rose Bowl contention and whatnot. And the only difference between the Rose Bowl year and the 7-win year was we got hurt and we just didn't quite always have the depth. And I think SC struggled with that as well, to be honest with you, to a certain extent in the 80s and 90s, because that's where you saw the rise of like the Florida States and the Floridas and all of that across the board. But I think that's also been exacerbated now in the 2000s and the 2010s. Because if you look at wide receiver, for instance, right, Fred, and then we'll get off this because everyone's going to crush me for talking too much UCLA on this show.
It's all right, man.
When you talk about, even if you look at the receiving corps today, right now, right, you got Branch, you got Deuce, you got Jacoby Lane with USC. If you look at UCLA, you got J. Michael Sturdivant, you got Logan Loya, you had Kyle Ford at one point. Like, that's a pretty comparable 1, 2, 3 in terms of kind of skill position. Where it's significantly different is when you go 4, 5, 6, 4, 5, 6. Even when you look at kind of running back, right? Like you start comparing, Joyner and, where the young kids who are with the TJ Harden, that's pretty comparable. It's then the depth. When you look at O-line, first 3, 4 guys, pretty comparable. And then you look at the depth. You look at the quarterback room. You look at the defense all the way across the board. So what makes USC football sort of elite and what makes Ohio State and Alabama and Georgia and LSU, it's not the 1, 2, 3 guys. It's the 4, 5, 6 guys that actually makes the program. It's kind of what Bill Belichick used to say about what makes a dynasty, where he was like, you went to 10 AFC championship games, right, in like 14 years. You won 7 Super Bowls in 14 years. He said, you know what? It's not or 7 Super Bowls in 20 years, whatever the number is. He's like, the dynasty is defined not by the years you won it all. The dynasty is defined by the years you didn't win it all. Because the years you didn't win it all, you were still Final Four. You were still AFC Championship game. You were still Super Bowl. There was no drop-off. Yeah. And I think there's a similar phenomena with elite program. It's not just, hey, did you get the 5-star guys that are getting all the pub? But are your backups ready to contribute right away in a similar fashion if there is an injury? That's what makes a program truly elite.
Is that what is? So basically what you're telling me is you got to have the Matt Castle effect.
Yep.
I mean, to sum it all up, you got to have the Matt Castle effect, right? You got a dude who wasn't better than Carson, wasn't better than Matt, goes to the NFL and has a decent career, was an NFL starter, but basically was a backup, right? But How good was he really? We don't know, but he probably was pretty good to play in the NFL for that long.
Absolutely.
He just wasn't better than Matt. Right?
Exactly.
So
exactly.
It's one of those things. Like, so I completely understand what you're saying. Sorry for the delay. Back to Hilton Stubbs. Hilton Stubbs, 6'1", 180. When this dude gets weight on him, he's going to be a 200-pound. The safeties are getting bigger now at SC, which, hold on, kind of reminds me back when I was there, right? And we need bigger safeties because D'Anton Lynn puts the safeties in the box and they're forced to tackle. So there's no more missed tackles and those types of things. Size matters, and we've been talking about size, and Lincoln Riley is recruiting a lot of size. I don't know what flipped the switch, but I like what he's doing right now recruiting-wise, Jamal. Like, this kid is a ball hawk. He's going to go get the ball, right? I love the fact that he's creating competition. And a lot of kids are scared of competition today. It's easier to leave than to compete. I will tell you this. This class might win the national championship. And I'll tell you why. The people who stay weren't afraid to compete, and they dealt with adversity, and they could deal with anything. They could get through the changes. And no matter who you bring in, it's still my team, and we're going to do this. That also creates national champions. So anybody who stays from this 2025 class might be the national championship class. Hopefully we have a few way before then because we're talking 4 years on the rise, so that'd be 2029. But I could see a 2029, 2028 national championship because of what's being created at USC. Agree or disagree?
No, I think it's a fair point, Fred. I think it's an absolutely fair point, and we don't have to look very far to look at an example of that. It just happened this year. Look at Michigan, 2023 national champions. Look at that class of 2023. Everybody forgets the freshman year, the first year of that class in 2020 was the COVID year. They went 2-4. Harbaugh was about to get fired. The program was in total disarray. Everyone said he's totally lost it. This program is in shambles. They may never get back. And from 2020 to 2023, they went to 3 straight playoffs and then won the national championship from where they were their freshman year. So I agree with you in terms of adversity has the impact of being able to create, what they say, no pressure, no diamonds, right? Yeah. And so that's really, this has the opportunity. If it could happen for Michigan, why can't it happen for USC? So I completely agree with you there. And Fred, to your earlier point about what has changed, I think with Lincoln Riley is, I think there's an acknowledgement that he can't just outscore his way to a national championship. Let's look at, he's had 7 years now as a head coach, 5 at OU, 2 at USC. His first 3 years as a head coach at OU, they went to the college football playoff all 3 years. Now, they didn't win a game in the college football playoff, but they went every year. His last 4 years, 0 college football playoff appearances. Okay, so he inherited an incredible situation with Bob Stoops, had a lot of talent around him. Stoops kind of set it up very nicely in terms of succession planning, and he thought he could just sort of outscore his way with the likes of Mayfield, with the likes of Murray, with the likes of Hurts to be able to make it and win a national championship. And then you realize once Bob Stoops goes away, once that succession plan goes away, it's not that easy. You actually have to coach both sides of the ball. And it's not just an OU thing because he came to USC and the same thing happened. And I think his first year at USC was actually very similar to his first few years at OU, where, again, it was an 11-win team, almost made the playoff, almost won the Pac-12. But you and I both know that was kind of smoke and mirrors, right? There were a lot of close games there. There were a lot of holes there. Every ball bounced SC's way early in the season to be able to set themselves up. 8-5 now became regression back to the mean. And I think he realized, look, I'm 7 years into this thing. This is year 8 now. If I don't get it right now with 2 premier jobs, OU and USC, I'm probably never going to get it right. And so I think there was a real looking in the mirror, a lot of self-awareness, realizing I got to be more holistic. I got to be more well-rounded. I have to have more respect for the other side of the ball, even though the offensive side is my specialty. So in that regard, you have to give him a lot of credit because that's not easy. Putting the mirror in front of yourself and saying, hey, I've had a lot of success doing what I've been doing, but how do I actually get better? There's a glass ceiling here. And by all indications, he's done that. Now, it's one thing to get a few recruits. It's one thing to hire a few coaches. check. He's had an A+ off season. Now it's got to translate on the field.
Yeah, 100% definitely has to translate on the field. And he's doing great with the recruiting trail as of right now. And, you know, I'm from Missouri. You got to show me first. Like, we can get excited now, which we all have every right to get excited now. But eventually, you got to pay the piper, and we expect results. Because, just like I told my family yesterday at Easter dinner, I said, SC will be on the check, just on the field with a check, just like they were at College Station with their thumbs up, ready to go get the next guy easily. Like, hey, we got to get this guy. Hey, here's your check. So we got to be prepared. We got to keep on moving, man. We got to keep pushing forward. And the key is don't be complacent, right? You can't say, hey, we got a great 2025 class. We're good. No, we got to do it 26, 27, 28, 29. Like, we got to keep this thing revolving. Because there are a lot of coaches, and just in case Lincoln walks, we got dudes behind them, and hopefully Lincoln puts in a very good succession plan for them. So that's where I am on that. That's how I feel today. Jamal, you got anything else before we wrap this thing up?
No, obviously we're down one bandit here of the bearded bandits, and just FYI, we've actually had some representation from Ryan. There was an NIL event for Juju Lewis today down south, so Ryan was off attending that and making sure LAFB was represented there. So a very, very valid excuse why Ryan's not here, and I'm sure he'll be joining us on Thursday to keep the conversation going. But, Fred, there's just sort of a magic here with all three of us. Even in the offseason, it feels like there's always something, and you and I can belt out a half-an-hour episode in our sleep, my friend.
Hey, just to let you know, I'm going to talk a whole bunch of shit to Ryan. He just doesn't know. Like, damn, Ryan.
As you should.
Big time now. All right.
Yeah.
I didn't know. Like, I didn't even know we're allowed to hang out with you. You're in the upper class. Like, damn, all right, Ryan. So definitely. Man, I appreciate you, man. We always have fun. I know this wasn't a topic where we could get into real deep discussion like we normally do, but still enjoy it. I love this so much. How about we come back and do this again on Thursday? How's that sound?
Phenomenal idea.
Thank you. Definitely. Guys, we appreciate you. Thanks for watching. This has been the Bet Online Salute to Troy podcast. You guys know how it goes. Live free, fight on.